start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I live by the old code of second floor!
Why look for a scientific explanation when you can put blind trust in an invisible Sky Daddy?
Sky Daddy all the way.
Go watch your crappy sitcom! Turn up full volume, why don't you?
Aubrey, weird, I can't even get through my couch!
She just has energy through the roof, and I'm just like, I want to be more like you. And she just called me and was like, I just want to let you know, I'm lifting you up, I'm praying for you and Taylor, and like last week when I was going through that freaking dark storm, she was like really helped me through it. And it's so funny, dude. Like, I feel like this week, as much pain as I felt like I went through, God was reminding me and showing me other people that like are going through way worse stuff. And it was like I hear you, Joseph, and I see you, and like I know this is hard for you, and I care for you, and have perspective. Like there's people that are going through way worse stress.
Yeah. That's hard to do, bro, when you're in the thick of it. It's hard to have perspective.
Yeah, God, but what about me?
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome back to the Second Floor Experience podcast. Last week, we were in a very nice professional studio.
Yeah.
And had a great guest. And this week, we're back in the studio, and we're just here to kind of debrief a little bit and just hang out and kind of work through some things that we're going through in our heads and in our hearts and in our lives. And we've kind of already talked about a lot, but
We have. Yeah.
a little bit longer pre-show than usual. But there's some very cool things happening, and I think, Zach, you had some things that you wanted to talk about today.
Yeah.
I have some things that have just been on my mind a lot too. So, what's up with you, though, man?
Well, dude, there's been something that I've been wanting to talk about for a little bit ever since. Oh my gosh, was his name Robert?
Yeah.
Right. What was his Brandon's
Brandon's
brother, Robert? Yeah. Ever since his episode, this has been on my mind. That was like 3-4 weeks ago. I don't know. But I remember. I don't know. I mean, I know you've been like reading about Dallas Willard and all that stuff. I don't know how much this is gonna tie into that, or into anything that we talk about on this podcast, on this episode. But it's just been on my mind. So he mentioned during that episode, he mentioned Hebrews 10:25. Okay, which is. It's the verse that
Come on, you don't have it memorized?
I don't, dude. I don't. I'm not a real Christian.
Bummer.
I know. Okay, so. Okay, do you remember he was I can't remember exactly like what subject we were on at the moment, but he mentioned this verse where he was talking about like meeting at church, right? And he was saying. He like referenced the verse, don't neglect meeting with like other believers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's. I'll read the verse. So, actually, I'll read 24 and 25. The author says, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." You get that?
Sorry, one more time.
So, okay. "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." Okay. So
are you saying that this verse may be taken out of context?
maybe just a little bit. It sparked my interest during that conversation because I've heard people reference that so many times, like growing up in church. And that's like, I mean, I know we've talked about this so many times on the podcast, but I just remember growing up, like hearing that all the time, that verse being referenced, and then use like pastors or believers or whoever using that verse to kind of like give reason for the command to attend church, right? Like, if you're a person who's not going to church, like very often, like at all, like if you skip a Sunday, like a lot of times that is a verse that's used
Right.
to like, to almost like, I don't know, I don't want to say condemn, sometimes condemn.
Yeah. Convict people.
Yeah, convict. Yeah, that's a better word. So I was just like, dang, okay, I've never really gotten to the bottom of that verse. And I just wanted to read like around it and kind of understand the context of it. And so today I just read all of Hebrews. Just like, it's only 13 chapters, so I just went start to finish.
Nice.
And it was really interesting. Like, the book starts off with the author. They don't really know exactly who the author of Hebrews is. There's a lot of times where he kind of writes like Paul.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Paul. And then there's other times where it just like doesn't really. And then there's been like arguments for people saying that there's been arguments for it being like a woman author. I've heard that as well. So it's interesting.
And then some people, don't they say it might be Apollos too?
Yeah,
I've heard
I think
that
so.
theory.
Yeah. So we don't know who the author is, but from reading the like book as a whole, I think it's like pretty. If you like just zoom out and analyze it as a whole, the book is almost written like a sermon, or like they call it an like some scholars call it like an exhortation to these people. I can't remember if it even specifies like who if there's like a specific like area or like people that they're writing to, like people like like to the Romans or to the Corinthians, whatever. So it was probably a book that was read aloud among like a lot of different congregations around the area, right? Like it was just sent out. Okay.
Interesting.
And it starts off with the author talking about like Jesus as how like almost making a case or an argument, explaining how Jesus is higher than the angels. And like he goes into this whole thing of how he's our high priest, right? And that like in the Old Covenant, in the Old Testament of the Bible, and like ancient like Israelite history, the priest was the one who like represented the people, like the rest of the people, when like offering sacrifices to like cleanse them of their sins, right? So he would go into the temple or the tabernacle. He would do like sacrifice an animal for himself to cleanse himself, and then he would also like present the sacrifices for the people as well, and represent them, right? Like in their cleansing, okay? And so the author of Hebrews talks about how Jesus is the ultimate high priest that not like was perfect, right? So he didn't have to offer a sacrifice for himself to cleanse himself. Like he literally was the sacrifice to cleanse like all people who like believe in him, right?
Yeah.
So it goes through all of that, okay? And it talks about like there's like one segment, and I think like chapter 5 or 6 or 7, and he kind of like takes a break and he's like, okay, the best way I can describe this. Have you ever been in like a? I'm sure you've been through this, like on a sports team, growing up, and like the coach that maybe there's a day like maybe I don't know, halfway through the season where you're having a practice and the coach is like, he'll make a comment like, you know, you guys know the technique, you guys know like the basics, so, or something along the lines of like, let's not like go like, almost like sometimes a coach will get annoyed by the team, right? If like they keep making dumb mistakes, like
Right.
technical mistakes that they should know,
Mm-hmm.
that are like basic, right?
Mhm.
And so a coach, like I've been in a practice where a coach says like, you know, let's move on from this and get to like deeper understanding of like the game or of a play or whatever, right? And so he makes a comment like that. The author makes a comment of, he says, and I think it's like chapter 5 or 6, and he says like, this is where the whole verse of him talking about like craving spiritual milk comes from.
Okay.
And he talks about like newborn babies, just like newborn babies crave milk, right? Like that's like what they consume because that's all they can consume. Eventually, like you want to grow in your faith and mature in your faith so that you can consume actual food, right? And that's the kind of like the metaphor he uses for their faith. Like, let's not go over, like, you've learned about the resurrection, you've learned about the like the forgiveness of sins, right? Like you learn about like all these things. So let's not keep going back to these things over and over again. Like, let's mature in our faith so we can have further understanding of like these things, right? And it's clear from the writing that he's talking to a group of people that were experiencing persecution, okay? And probably a lot of them were doubting, like in their faith and wanting to give up. And so the whole exhortation or sermon is to almost be like an encouragement of like the things that you learned about Christ are true, and like the same energy and excitement that you had and like resilience that you had when you first accepted Christ as your Savior, like don't let that dwindle basically from these, because he says like you guys were, you know, you guys suffered for your faith, you guys were persecuted, you like were in prison or whatever, but like you remained strong. And then now it's like been a while, and so maybe there's like false teachings going on or like persecution or whatever, and like people are starting to doubt. And so this whole thing is basically about that. Like it's really just like an encouragement in the faith of like, you guys know the basics, you guys know like what's true, just stay strong. And he gives like further reasoning as to why you can trust what Jesus is saying, like as to why he is what he claimed to be, right? And that's like the gist of Hebrews. Okay. So to take that verse, Hebrews 10:25, and like make it like just a simple, like use it as a simple commandment to just like attend your church, at the very least feels like a major oversimplification.
So you're saying that you wouldn't consider the gathering of saints in which the verse's context is referring to this group of believers who were just gathering together and who were trying to overcome this persecution. You're basically saying that if the goal of the whole book of Hebrews is to talk about that, then it's at least an oversimplification to then make the connection that 2,000 years later almost, to tell someone that this is somehow a commandment that you should go attend this nonprofit organization, which also happens to be an assembly of believers too.
Yes. Yes. Pretty much. And so it was just like those things are so interesting to me because it's just crazy how easy it is
Yeah.
to just take a verse
Yeah.
and just like not make up, but kind of like make up a commandment. And over time, it just becomes like normal. And so you hear something like that over and over and over, and so you just accept it as,
What you should do.
yeah, exactly. And so,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
Because, and this is maybe where it could tie into some of Dallas Willard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when you make that the commandment, as in going to church, let's just say every Sunday, you make that the commandment, then in order to fulfill that religious commandment, you go and do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the promise is, hey, as long as you're following this quote law, this like commandment of going to church,
Yes.
you will receive what, like the fruit of that, which would be like a transformed life, or
Yeah.
you know, at least like freedom from sin or something like that. But I think that's kind of like the main theme of our religious talk on this podcast, is that for so many people it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Dallas Willard cuts into, is like, not that, and that's what it's so easy to mistake, is not that going to church is not helpful. It's that when going to church is turned into a religious command only,
Yes.
in
Right.
in the aspect of living in the kingdom of God every day and focusing on being with the Lord all the time, is sort of lost in that translation.
Yeah. Yeah. And just it becomes legalism.
Yeah.
It becomes a legalistic command that's like not even within context of what the actual book is about. And so I do want to reaffirm like what the author of Hebrews says in that verse. Like what he says is true. Like it's absolutely true, because they were being persecuted, and from what the author says, you can kind of understand that like the believers were neglecting meeting with each other because they didn't, whether it was out of fear or whether it was out of, you know, whatever. The author was saying like, no, like have faith and be bold. Don't neglect meeting each other to like specifically for the reason to encourage one another and to love one another and like spur each other on, right? And that is like something that we should adhere to. Like that's important for, I mean, that's church, ecclesia, right? Like that, it's an assembly of people, right? And so yes, like if you are a Christian, like if you're a believer, you should meet with other believers regularly. Like that is probably good for your faith.
I tell you what,
Like-
these last few weeks, I have been super grateful to have a community of believers that I can go to, or that I can meet with every Sunday. Super grateful. And to hear a great message and like feel fed by the word. I mean, truly, I've been so especially grateful these past few weeks. And I've received several like words of knowledge and encouragement. And my faith has been truly grown these past few weeks. And it would have really sucked to not be able to have a church family that I could go visit.
Yeah.
Seriously. So like, I mean, I've been genuinely grateful that I've had a church that I can go to. And at the same time, I didn't go because I was trying to fulfill a religious commitment.
Right.
I went because I genuinely needed encouragement, and I needed to be around like-minded people, and that increased my faith. And I heard a message that broke down the word of God, and it was like food to my soul,
Mm.
and like living water that quenched my thirst.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, that's the whole purpose of church.
Yeah.
So then, like that, the problem is that you don't have to, like, sometimes we act like you can only find that inside your church building, right? Like,
We do act like that.
so,
We do act like that.
yeah. But I know, like, I don't want to go too far down that.
Yeah,
this-
we've kind of beaten that.
Yeah,
that horse dead.
we have. But I just, like, I think I'm trying to further, instead, like, point out how easy it is to just, like, accept what you've been told,
Yes.
like, forever, you know?
Yes.
Like, it's just so
Dude.
easy just to, like, because you've been taught that for so long, like, you just accept it as fact. Like, that's why it's just so important to read scripture, like, for yourself, and, like, really, because truthfully, that's like, it's just easy. It's just easy to throw out that kind of command
It is.
and, like, and justify that, like, for convicting believers for not going to their church building, right? Like, that's just easy. It takes a little more effort to actually, like, sit down and understand, like, and do the work to understand the scripture as a whole. So that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, that's what's important.
That was a great breakdown, and I had no idea. Like that really helped me understand the context of that verse, because I thought the same thing, and it's almost like a thought-stopping verse that people throw out.
Yeah.
And like people do the same thing with tithing when they throw out that verse of like, if you give, you'll be blessed. If you don't give, you'll be cursed. And it's like, well, like there's some more nuance to that.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of things that people throw out that it's like a means to their end.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's like, okay, it's not necessarily a bad thing that you want people to go to church or you want people to give. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but is that really what we want to teach people, is just to accept whatever we say? Or are we trying to teach people like how to think critically and how to observe scripture and how to think for themselves, instead of just coming to a place like to blindly receive something? Because if they're going to blindly receive from you, who else are they blindly receiving from?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
right.
What other influences in the world are they just going to take little tidbits and weave it into their theology?
Yeah. It's true.
Just trying to ruffle some feathers here, man. That's all we're trying to do. That's all we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Truthfully, it had been a while since I like sat down and read scripture like that. But it was just, dude, Hebrews, man, it's so good.
So good.
It's so good.
It really is so unique too.
It is,
When I
dude.
read through it, I'm just like, gosh, this just hits.
Bro, and especially like we were talking about, like, pre-show.
Yeah.
Like, dude, Hebrews just speaks directly to that. Like, when it talks about the heroes of the faith,
Why don't you go into that?
it's a lot, dude. I mean, I
Right.
can try.
I mean, just like, what I mean is like specifically before this, we were talking about how difficult it is in the moment
Yeah.
to have faith,
Yeah.
especially when it seems like, when the disciples were on the boat crossing, I think it was the Sea of Galilee, and this storm comes, and all they see is the waves and the winds crashing, and they're about to freaking drown and die, and they're looking, Jesus sleeping. Jesus, wake up, man! Like, we're about to die. Don't you see us over here? And he wakes up and like says, "Oh, you have little faith," it calms the waves. So like when we were just talking about how it's so easy when your life feels like that to not like to not really believe that things are going to get better or believe that God's with you
Yeah.
because you're in the moment, all you can see is like you're terrified. You just think that you're about to die, or you just think about like
Everything that could go wrong.
everything that could go wrong.
Yeah.
Like when Peter walks on water, but then he looks around and he sees the storm. He sees the storm around him and begins to sink.
Yeah.
What you put your focus on happens. He had his focus on Jesus, he was walking on water. He had his focus on the waves, he was sinking. And that's kind of the context of what we were talking about before. And then
Yeah, and we're just talking about like how. Sorry, did I cut you off?
No.
Okay. Just like this time of our lives, there's just a lot of ways and things that like we're deciding to do that just don't always feel like the smartest thing to do, or like, or the most fun, or the most comfortable, or like, or just plain stupid. Like, and it sucks sometimes, dude. It just sucks. Like, just to be
Sometimes
completely
it just
honest,
sucks.
it just sucks. And
When you know when you're walking around and you're looking at freaking animals and thinking about like, man, what a good life you must have. All you gotta do is eat, go to sleep, freaking poop and pee. Must be nice. You know you're going through it, dude.
dude, yeah.
You know you're going through it.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's just like there's so many days where I feel like, I'm sure you relate to this. Like there are times I feel like I feel like I've been sacrificing a lot to like be here and do the things that I'm doing. I feel like I've been sacrificing things that I'm really passionate about like for years now. And it's really hard to like keep hope and like trust and faith that there's going to be an end and I'm going to see a reward at the end. Right?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it's like, because you were talking about perspective.
Yeah.
Before, and there's so many days where I'm like, dang, I'm not sacrificing enough. Like, I gotta sacrifice more. And yeah, like it just, you like go through that cycle of not feeling like you're doing enough,
Yeah.
but trying to do your best. And you're not like really seeing the results. And that's just, it's kind of like an analogy I think of when you, like, we're talking about, you know, being a risk taker. And like, if you want, it's just so easy in life to not take risks. Like, it's so easy to stay comfortable. And if you want to see like the rewards or like those, if you want to see your dreams come true, you have to take a risk.
Yeah.
And taking a risk means that everything could go wrong. Like,
Yeah.
that's a very, like, that's reality. And so you have
That's
to, like,
reality.
you have to be able to come to terms with that. And that's like the hardest part. But like, for me, I like to think of the analogy of like crossing a bridge and you can't like really see the end. And like on the bridge, you know, maybe, I don't know, like you don't know what's going to be on the other side.
Yeah.
And you kind of just have to like go. Like sometimes when you start things that are difficult or like your dreams or whatever, and I mean, this all just sounds so cliche. I hate it. Gosh. But it's just, I feel like we're just in it right now. You know?
We are, bro.
We're just in it. So this is all I know to talk. This is like all I can talk about. This is like all I
Because-
think about.
Listen, this is
So-
why, okay? This is why. Because, like, for the last 2 or 3 years, we have been talking about getting into our dreams.
Yeah.
And
right.
we've been doing, like, what we felt like were the right, just tiny steps towards those
Yeah.
things. And what we're experiencing right now is what I believe is the compounding is starting to happen. Is like that we've been at this long enough for us just to see the glimmer of the first little bit of results. And at the same time, we're also experiencing the weight of that responsibility of like, dang, You know, it's a lot easier to sit down on a Saturday night and watch a movie and then talk about, man, wouldn't it be so nice? And daydream about our dream lives.
Yeah.
Then you get to the point where like, oh, wait, this is what I'm going to have to sacrifice to get there. It kind of makes you be like, oh, it was a lot easier when, you know, I didn't have all this responsibility. Or it was a lot
Yeah.
easier when I could just talk about this. I didn't actually have to do it.
Yes.
And that's what the point that we're at right now is like we're putting our time and our money where our mouth is. And it's painful,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's like, but that is sort of the cost. It is the cost of the opportunity to possibly live our dreams. It's not a guarantee,
Right.
but it's the cost of possibility, the cost of opportunity that I've literally started to think about like this every time that I feel like I've had to make a sacrifice in my life. Like for me, it's a sacrifice not to get to go on this trip with you guys
Yeah. Yeah.
because I want to go hang out with you. I want to have fun.
Yeah.
And I think of it like there's literally a jar that I'm putting this trip into as like a sacrifice jar. And I'm like, okay, I'm sacrificing this trip with my friends. Why? Because I want to be able to live this dream life.
Mm.
I want to be able to live this life of my dreams. And if I go on this trip, then I could lose momentum, or I'm not going to be able to complete the work I need to complete in order to make these things happen. And that's like the reality I had to face. And that sucks.
Yeah.
But it's like a currency. I'm trying to think of it as like a literal
Yeah.
currency of sacrifice. And I'm putting it in this jar, putting it in this jar, putting it in this jar. And eventually, hopefully the jar will get, I don't know how far this analogy goes.
Yeah.
But like maybe the jar gets full enough and then I get to start to see that life become a reality.
Yeah.
And I will say I did have a big moment this week where I did see something that not October 2024, October 2023, when I started that coaching program
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Stephanie. I literally saw this week something that I talked about to her
Mm-hmm.
and did those visualizations in the time machine with her literally became a reality,
Yeah.
which was like such a wild thing. And you had the same thing happen. Like just from going to her event.
Yeah.
Like you literally had the same thing happen.
It's true.
And so this is what I realized is that anytime I read about people that have done great things and the people that I admire and I look up to, a lot of times the only thing that people focus on is the greatness that they've achieved. But then
Yeah.
when you start to look back and see where did they come from, how did they develop, it is wild how different they are when they're young to the person that is revered for their greatness when they're older.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like and that gives me so much hope because to me, I'm like, how I see this person in my dreams that's achieving these things and I feel very different from that person. Like I don't feel capable enough. I don't
Yeah.
feel like I'm skilled enough or confident enough or right.
Yes.
And so that sometimes gets to me. And then I go and I have to literally read these stories because I make the connection. I'm like, oh, this person wasn't even close to the person that I now know as my hero or like
yeah.
someone I look up to. And in fact, they went through so many ups and downs before they ever even came to the reality of their destiny. But
Yeah.
when they did, they made a decision. They owned that decision. They went 100% in and they took full accountability for that. And they stayed consistent with it.
Yeah.
And it's those ingredients that gave them the best possible chance to achieve great. And when I mean greatness, when I say greatness, I mean that they realized their potential as a human being. To me,
Yeah.
that's how I define greatness. Is like and that's I think how David Goggins also defines it when he talks about like getting to heaven and looking and standing in front of God and God being like, you could have been this person,
Yeah.
right? He doesn't want to leave anything on the table, doesn't want to leave any meat on the bone, as they
Mhm.
say. And so that's how I try to define greatness: is if God gave me potential and I believe that we have free will,
Right.
then
Right.
I don't want to leave anything left on the table when my time comes
Right.
to leave this world.
It's like you want to be all that you possibly could
Could
be.
be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think there's a part of everyone that always wants to hold you back. It's that voice in your head that's like, don't you realize you have to give up your nights, your weekends?
Yeah.
Then you can't go be with your friends on this day.
Yeah.
You know,
What is this
maybe
person gonna
spend
think?
less time with your wife. Well, what happens if you don't make the money you need to make? What happens if you have a family and da 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 da? And it's like, hey, wouldn't it be so much better if you just didn't do this?
Mm-hmm.
And like that's the lie that you have to expose. Because I think back to Jim Carrey tells a story about his dad. When his dad was like a super talented musician. And he gave up being a musician to become an accountant because he felt like that was the safe route.
Mm.
And then he gets let go from being an accountant and like can barely feed his family. And Jim Carrey was like, he took the safe route, and even the safe route has risk. So he's like, so Jim Carrey told himself, I might as well just go for it.
Mm.
And I think about that so much.
Gosh, dude.
Like that stuff has been like churning in my soul these past few weeks.
Yeah.
And dude, you want to hear another thing? So when I'm reading Dallas Willard's, for the audience, I'm reading Dallas Willard's autobiography.
Mm.
Is autobiography where another person writes it?
No, that's biography.
Dang it.
Yeah.
I've been saying it backwards. Okay, it's his biography. He didn't write it. Someone else wrote it. And he's at this point in his life. He's married. He's got a kid. He's been to some college, a pretty good amount of college actually. And he's like, okay, he's really struggling with anxiety and is like, do I go the ministry route or do I go the academic route? Like, do I go the church route or do I go to the school route? Like, do I become a full-fledged academia professor savant, or do I go become a pastor and start a church or whatever?
Mm.
And he's at this dinner and this guy can tell that he's really struggling. And he asks why, and Dallas Willard says, I'm struggling with this, don't know which way to go. Sort of like a divide, right? He can see his life going in two different directions, but he's got to make a choice. He's got to commit, right?
Yeah.
And the guy just simply said, if you go to church, you won't be able to go to school. The schools won't welcome you. The universities won't welcome you. But if you go to the university, the churches will welcome you.
Hmm.
And for him, that was a very clear sign that I need to go to the universities.
Wow.
And in the universities, he ended up going to USC, University of Southern California, and spent 46 years as a professor
God.
in the philosophy department.
Dude,
And
that is a long freaking time.
he like was not able to necessarily share his faith in the classroom, obviously, because it's a university, but he was able to counsel his students, like so many students he was able to counsel. He was able to, when they came up to him and asked him about God, he was able to share that. And then he was also invited to many different churches, many different events. And a lot of the lectures that I watch from him now are when churches would invite him for like a weekend or a night or something, and he would do like a lecture at the church. And it like literally hit me right before we started that, you know, you and I have kind of talked about how we went to SAGU, and a lot of SAGU in the ministry department is like basically predicated on you're here because you're going to go into full-time ministry.
Right. Yeah.
As in like become a pastor
Right.
or something. And you and I were just like, I just don't really
Didn't really
feel
fit that
like
box.
that's
Yeah.
what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But I don't know what else to do with this degree,
Mm.
like necessarily.
Yeah.
And you and I both have this passion for business because we feel like if we can grow our skills in business, we can become more free financially and time-wise, and that will like increase our ability to do different types of ministry
Yeah.
and
yeah.
give in different ways.
Right.
That's like sort of our ethos right now
Yeah.
that we're living. And I think the same type of explanation that that guy gave Dallas Willard can be applied to us. Is like if we went into full-time ministry, into the church, we couldn't necessarily make the same impact in business or in our communities.
Right. Yeah.
But since we're going into business, since we are in business, we are able to have an impact on the church and on the community. And I think that that's backed up by a lot of things that our pastor says when he's like, he doesn't like to tell people that he's a pastor
Mm-hmm.
because it instantly makes people act different.
Yeah. It does. Yeah.
And so it's just, I think it's just a different calling. It's definitely a different calling, obviously, but it's just a different way that you can evangelize. You can have different conversations with people. Like, dude, I can't tell you. It's been so cool, just over the past few weeks in this this construction job that we're doing. That has taken a lot of faith for me to do. It's massive. That I have talked to my salespeople, my suppliers, my managers, my team members about faith and about having faith in God when you don't have the results, or for us, like when we don't have the leads or we don't have the answer, or we don't know what we're going to do. And I've just been saying like, man, I don't know. I'm just praying about it and I'm trying to leave the results up to God. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, I don't think God likes me. And you're like, interesting. Why do you think that?
Yeah.
Right? And it like opens up a conversation. Or
Mhm.
I sent an email to literally our supplier after I got some good news that I had, like, literally is basically a miracle business-wise that this could ever happen. And I was like, I just sent an email back and I was like, wow, I've literally been praying for this. Like, I am shocked, but like, praise God. And he just emailed me back and was like, God works in mysterious ways. And I'm just like, this is so cool, dude.
Those little nuggets, man.
This is so cool. But I think
That's cool.
like even more than that, what we're trying to do with this whole cafe concept is provide a space for people outside of the traditional four walls of the church building
Mm-hmm.
to have those defenses down where they're not looking at religion and saying, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. And they can experience critical thinking. They can experience community. They can experience these things outside, and it would maybe conflict with their current worldview of everything inside of church is bad, everything about God is bad, or whatever their worldview is. And the Holy Spirit can kind of get an in.
Yeah, for sure.
And the reason we have to talk about this so much is because each day is a freaking battle
Yeah.
to continue doing that
Yeah.
when you don't see the results you want to see yet.
Seriously, dude. I mean, I can't even count how many times like I've been asked, or I mean, just the fact that like I went to SAGU, I got a Bible and theology degree, and then didn't go into ministry. It's like, why? Like, what are you doing then? You know what I mean? Like,
Dude.
why? It's like, why would you get a degree in that and then not go into ministry? Like,
Dude.
that makes zero sense. And so just that aspect of alone, it's like, gosh, now I have this degree and like I don't even want to go to ministry. So to fight off that like fear or like worry that like, oh my gosh, I just wasted my life. I just wasted 4 years and like all this money, right? Like, that's scary, dude.
It is.
Because, but at the same time, it's like I feel like this is where God is leading me, and that's the whole, like, that's all part of what we've been talking about, of like just having to trust and keep going, even though it does not make sense. Like, it would make perfect sense for me just to get a degree and like get like a Bible and theology degree, and then go the whole ministry route, become a youth pastor for however long, and then, you know, become an executive pastor and like just do that. And like, and seriously, like, I mean, dude, there are people that go down that route and they're made for it, dude. They're made for it.
100%.
Like, that is what they're
Called to it,
called
made
to
for it.
do. Yes. But it took me a long time, like, for
Yeah.
me to accept for myself, like, okay, I don't have to go down that route. Like, I feel like God is leading me in a different direction. And even though it doesn't like
Wow.
really make sense
Yeah.
to the outside world, to like the conventional
Yeah.
route, you just gotta go for it, you know? You just gotta keep going.
Yeah.
And same with you, right? Like, religion, philosophy, like that makes zero sense
It doesn't.
for to go and start a business and like have those kind of passions. So it's just
And that's what it
Yeah.
feels like right now, is like my life is a book, and I'm in the chapters that's labeled early life.
yeah.
And it's like he goes and gets a degree in religion and philosophy and then starts a fence business.
Yeah.
And you're reading it and you're just like, this doesn't make any sense.
yes.
How is this going to end up? Or like for
Yeah.
you, right? It's reading like he went and got a degree in Bible and theology and then started a bookkeeping business. And you're reading it and you're like, how does that connect
What?
to this? And why are they doing that? And it's like, you just don't have the chapters later yet to be like, oh, wow, that's how God orchestrated all of it together. So we're literally in the part now where we're writing our story.
Yeah. It's the lore, dude.
It's the lore.
freaking lore.
We are in lore building phase.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is why we're sitting here every week on a podcast with 150 subscribers when everyone probably would say like it's just a waste of time.
Yeah.
We understand that we have faith enough to believe that God has a future for that craziness. And the crazier the circumstances, the better the story.
Yeah.
1,000%. But that's why I have to reverse engineer these stories, because it makes total sense when you hear someone's story and it's crazy and then they're able to say, and I became a millionaire, or and my church was
Yes.
successful, or and my business idea launched and it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the before that
Right.
that I'm more interested in.
Yeah. Gosh, dude. Yeah, that's, I mean, to tie all this back to Hebrews, I think it's like chapter 11 or 12, maybe, I don't know. But he talks about like all the heroes of the faith, and like it just goes down the line of Abraham, like Isaac, Jacob, and like Moses, and like it just goes through all the times where like Abraham was about to sacrifice his son,
Yeah.
right? And like freaking Moses, like leading literally millions of people out of the great Egypt, like, you know, standing against Pharaoh, like all these like crazy things.
I heard Tim Ross
that-
say that.
Yeah, that like that like these heroes of the faith went through, and the author says like not even like they what got them through it was faith, right? Like faith, and that God was going to accomplish what He had promised them. Like,
Mm.
and it even says that they never even saw, like, each of them never even saw the fullness of His promise, but like got a glimpse of it, right? Almost like they each had those moments like that. It's why they're the heroes
Mm.
of the faith, because God brought them through each of those situations, each of those like, you know, crazy events. But then there's still the aspect of it like being bigger than yourself. Like it's more than just it's not all about you. Like, this whole thing is bigger than just ourselves and, like, you know, like trying to do a cafe and like
Yeah.
wanting a place to hang out. Like,
Yes.
it's remembering that it's bigger than that, and like and like there's a reason why God is bringing us through everything that we've gone through. And I mean, yeah, like you said, you know, during, like, before we started recording, having perspective, like, it's when you just look at other people's lives and see like the kinds of things that they went through,
Mm.
and like kind of take the lens, like take the focus off of yourself. It's like, dang, like, you know, some people have it way worse than I do,
Dude.
you know? So I don't know. It's just the lore, man. It's the lore. That's just what it is.
Dude, when I saw for the first time this current podcast intro that you made, that was like a montage. I don't know why montages get me so good, dude.
Yeah.
But like the montages you've made of Second Floor, like actually videos from college Second Floor,
Yeah.
have always been like amazing. And when I just saw like all the different podcasts that we've done throughout this past year, just a few clips in that,
Literally like 5 or 6, I think.
it
yeah.
just like it just did something to me that I was just like, holy crap, this is why we're doing, like,
Yeah.
this is the lore.
Yeah.
This is why we're doing this, dude. And you just need those. You need those little nuggets of energy to keep you moving forward.
Yeah.
These are little glimmers. But on what
Yeah.
you were saying before that, I saw a YouTube short of Tim Ross saying to this girl who was like 20, asking about like, should she do this or should she do that? Sort of like asking a question about like a faith move she was about to make. And he was like, faith and miracles in the Bible were never convenient. He said, think about it. Jesus tells the disciples after a night of fishing and catching nothing, just go out to the deep where you're not really used to throwing your nets and just throw them on the other side. I know
Yeah.
you're dead tired and you're probably like scoffing at this idea, but just do it. That's inconvenient. Well, how are we going to feed these 4,000 or 5,000 people? We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. That's inconvenient.
Yeah.
Well, just get all the people out of Egypt and lead them out, and then stand up with your back against the Red Sea and Pharaoh coming to crush you. That's pretty inconvenient, I would say. Or Abraham, just take your son that I promised you, that you and Sarah didn't believe me for, up to this mountain and sacrifice him. That's pretty inconvenient. And so
Yeah.
I think when I realized that, I was like, oh, this is how it's supposed to feel. It's supposed to feel scary, inconvenient, terrifying. Oh, okay. Like, and I don't know why I had this idea in my head that a big faith move was just supposed to be like fun
Yeah.
or like easy. Yeah, there's moments that are fun for sure,
Yeah.
but
that's what, like, it's all about, dude. Like, that's why all the heroes are the heroes. It's because of like the turmoil and like the you know, like just the crazy, terrifying things that they went through. Like, that's what makes a story like a good story.
like Daniel in the lion's den.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not getting thrown into a den of lions. Like, not that bad. Like Joseph getting sold into slavery by his
Yeah.
own brothers, spending years in jail
After they wanted to kill him.
after they wanted to kill
Yeah.
him, holding on to this promise, like David being promised being an anointed king, and then getting chased around by Saul for years, like a freaking fugitive.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, like, we don't have, I mean, few people, especially in like modern Western society, can relate to a story like that.
Yeah,
But it's like, I
we're
mean,
soft.
yeah, we're soft. But I mean, Joe Rogan says this all the time, but it's like the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you, right? So it's
Yeah.
like
True.
everyone has their own battles.
Yes.
And like if it's the worst thing that's ever happened to you, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to you, right? Like
Yeah.
it's every generation, right? Like everybody has like their own battles that they have to work through and figure out. But yeah, it's like all these things, like, you know, the car crash I got in
Mm-hmm.
last year,
Yep.
the like a couple years ago when I lost that job,
Yeah.
or like all these things were like all these times where everything was just so uncertain.
Mm.
Like to look back now, it'd be like, dang, dude, I can't believe I got through that. Like it's like it's very rewarding. It's like,
very rewarding.
yeah, to
Would I want to do it again? No. But am I
No.
glad I went through it? Yes.
exactly.
Why?
Yeah,
Because of what I got from it.
exactly. And that's what it's about. Like that's what it's about.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I like it's crazy because I don't regret like getting my degree at all.
Me neither.
I actually like love that I
Me too.
got that education, and I firmly believe that like God has already used it and will use it more. Like
Mm.
use that education I got like more later on in my life. For sure. But it'll be in a way that like he has planned, almost like in a way that like that allows me to be the best person that I could possibly be, like the best version of myself I could possibly be.
Mm.
And with that comes trusting him, even when it doesn't make sense.
Well, I'm encouraged. Color me encouraged.
Yeah. I don't always feel this encouraged. But
Yeah, talk to me tomorrow morning and ask me how I'm feeling.
yeah, for real.
Sometimes you just got to go moment by moment. That's what I realized.
You have to, dude.
You have to break it down, parcel it out so thin that you're like, God, I'm just going to be with you this moment.
Yeah.
And then the next moment, you're like, I'm just going to be with you this moment. I'm just going to be with you this moment. This moment, this moment, this moment, this moment. And it's like what Jules said. She's like, I don't know how I got through that time of her life. That was like depression, brutal, divorce, all that. She was like, I look back and I genuinely don't know how. And it was like, I'll tell you how. It's moment by moment. It's how we
Yeah.
get through anything is moment by moment. Or if you want to make it a little bit longer, day by day.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have God. We have Jesus on our side. We have Jesus to hold on to. And like, I go back to that verse that he's like, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. It's not that he promises to keep this stuff from these bad things from happening to us, but he promises that he himself, his presence is going to be with us through it. And that is enough.
Yeah.
But that's sometimes hard to accept. That's enough.
Yeah.
Because we just want it to be done with sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. We just want to do it our way sometimes, or most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah, there's a quote.
Oh shoot.
This has been one of my favorite quotes as of late. From I think it's C.S. Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
and where is it? Yeah, he says, when God talks of their losing themselves, like as a like of a person losing themselves, like, you know, for the purpose of following him, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like when a
Losing
person-
themselves for the purpose of following him.
Yes. When God talks of losing themselves, he means only abandoning the clamor of self-will. Once they have done that, he really gives them back all their personality and boasts that when they are wholly his, they will be more themselves than ever.
Run that back. Say it again for the people in the back.
When God talks of their losing themselves, he means only abandoning the clamor of self-will. Basically, like your own desires and like your plans, your schemes. And once you've abandoned that, he really gives them back all their personality and boasts that when they are wholly his, they'll be more themselves than ever. Gosh, dude, that just...
I need people to start talking like that again.
Dude, I know, man. So good. But I read that out when I was studying Jacob. And like when Jacob was going through that moment of like, Jacob's a schemer, he's the liar, he's the one who's like always got something up his sleeve to make sure like things go his way or to manipulate someone or a situation. And like at the very end, he was just left, like he thought his brother was coming to kill him, and like he was all alone. He'd run out of schemes, he had no more plans. And his only, like, he could either choose to keep going down that road or choose to like fully let go in that moment when he's wrestling with God. And that's when you become like full, like when you're able to fully let go of that, like that's when you become who you're meant to be.
That's freaking fire.
C.S. Lewis, dude.
I got one for you. I think I told you this the other night. This was Jordan Peterson talking to Sean Ryan, who is a Navy SEAL, and was asking him why becoming a Navy SEAL was so meaningful to him. And Sean Ryan said, it's because it's the hardest thing I had ever done. And he said, exactly. The pathway to what's most real is through the hardest things that you can do.
That's tough because it's hard to do hard things.
That presents a problem. It's difficult to do difficult things. He says, why? Because that causes the best things within you to make themselves manifest. And truly, like, that's what I felt this last week, was the part of me that so desperately wants the most real thing in life is willing to do the hard thing, the difficult thing ahead. But the part of me that doesn't want to do the difficult thing is okay with not living the most real life I possibly could. And those two things are at war within me. And I think you could argue that it's like the flesh versus the spirit.
Yeah.
Like the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And I just like that moment by moment submission of just taking those thoughts captive, of just submitting, like, not my will but yours be done, not my will but yours be done.
Yeah.
Is what it takes for me right now. And eventually, it's like a muscle. And you get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And then instead of maybe the minority of the time that I spend is feeling the most real, it'll be the majority of my life, of me experiencing like what Robin Williams in the Dead Poet Society calls sucking the marrow out of life. Carpe diem, seizing the day, knowing that there's nothing more satisfying to me than knowing that I am exerting everything that I possibly can, and I'm leaving nothing on the table.
Yeah.
Truly, like that is the most exhilarating, the most satisfying is when I feel that way.
Yeah.
It's and then when I get to rest, it is the best kind of rest you could ever have.
It is, dude.
Because
It's
you
true.
know, like the way we felt after we built that fence in my backyard.
Yeah.
I'm just like, dang, that was exhausting. I am drained. I am cooked.
Yeah. And like that's what they say, like that pain is so like it seems so difficult, it sucks in the moment, but it's so much better than the pain and like regret of like laying your head down at night knowing that you didn't give your best and you're like, dang, like I don't deserve this rest. Dude, like
Yes.
that regret is like one of the worst feelings ever.
It is worse to me than the pain of going through difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I hate that. Like when I go to bed at night, I'm just like, dang, I could have done better today, dude. Like I know I could have done better today. That's a sucky feeling.
Truly. Truly.
Good stuff, dude.
Well, I feel like I got it all out. You got anything left
Same.
in the chamber?
All
right. Well, thank you once again for joining the Second Floor Experience podcast. This episode with Zach, myself, and our thoughts. Welcome to the lore. One day we'll look back on this and be like, wow, if only we knew what was coming.
Yeah, one day.
One day. One moment at a time, baby. Seriously, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with us. And if you're watching this back after seeing our success or our failure, hope you learned something.
Hope you at least enjoyed it.
Hope you enjoyed the ride.
Yeah.
And until next time, peace.
I want to talk to you. Not now, later. No, now.